All right, so we are making our way through Genesis. And the first question I have today is, who are leaders you think of in the Bible? So if I was to ask you to name a leader in the Bible, Shirley, who would you say? Who's your favorite leader? The whole thing. Who's your favorite leader? Okay, Christ. Sure. There's Shirley with the Sunday school answer. She nails it. She gets the bonus points for today. Paul? You like Paul. All right. Rick, who do you say? Moses. All right, very good. Dennis, who do you say? You're with Paul? It's already up on the board. All right, fine. All right. Darlene, who do you say? David. Ha, see? An original answer. David. All right. Clint, what do you got?
I'd say Joshua.
Joshua. Valerie. Oh, Sunday school answer there. Good job, Valerie. Joseph. The person we've been talking about for the last how many weeks now, right? Michael, who do you got? Favorite leader in the Bible? All right. Belle, who do you got?
I was going to say Joseph.
You were going to say Joseph too. Sure, why not? All right. Ben, who's your favorite leader in the Bible? Moses. Already on the board. Right? Yoli, who's your favorite leader in the Bible?
David?
Question mark? David. All right, now. There you go. Now we have a statement. Dexter. It's on the board, dude. Robert. Joshua. All right, we're a bunch of original folks up here. Nobody asked you, wife? All right, sorry, wife. Apologize. Should have asked the wife. Daniel. Right? There you go, Daniel. So, Abraham. All right, so there's a bunch of different people now. Michael. Sure, you can say Noah. All right, so we got a bunch of different people. All right, some over and over and over again, right? So we've got Joseph, Daniel, David, Moses, Samuel, right? We've got Gideon. We got bad guys too, though, right? We got Nebuchadnezzar. We got kings like Ahab. We've got kings like Josiah, right? So there's all sorts of different examples of leadership that we have in the Bible, yes? What makes, in your head, what characteristic makes a good leader? A good follower? Okay. Let's see. All right, it should be a good follower. What else? Selfless? What else? What's Cohan? He's what?
Decisive.
Okay. What characteristics are you looking for in a good leader?
Brave and fearless.
Brave and fearless. That's two. You only get one.
Sorry.
That's all right. Gonna cut you off. Dexter.
Obedient to God.
Obedient to God. That's more than one word.
Obedience.
There you go. We'll do a slash. Right. Obedient to God. Randy. Fair. All right. What else?
Discipline.
I didn't call on you yet.
Determined.
Determined.
I'm going to pick on you.
Okay, Bob, what'd you say?
Discipline.
Disciplined. What else? What else? Somebody else said, Yoli.
Courageous?
Question mark? Okay. Courageous? Something like Michael. Integrity. What else? Unwavering. Does that go with decisive? All right, because that's already on the board. What else? Characteristics for a good leader. Randy. Wise. There you go. Anything else? Sandy, got anything? Sure. I didn't actually hear you before, so we'll put it up there so you don't feel left out. Rick? Godly? So the obedient to God part, is that the same as godly? Righteous? We'll throw that in there. Peter? Do you want the slash in there too? Yeah, you only get one. Meekness / humility. L-A-T. All right. So, interesting characteristics we have. Let's take a look at a few that we can find in the Bible, right? So, Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18. Because that's where you study Genesis, is in Matthew. Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 4 says, At the same time came the disciples unto Jesus, saying, Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus called a little child unto him, and set him in the midst of them, and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted, and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. All right? So here in Matthew chapter 18, what characteristics do we see? Humility, right? And we have that on the board. What else is there? Or what anti-characteristic is there? Because that's a word. What don't we want our leaders to be? Right? Proud, right? So we don't want proud. Because how does Matthew 18 start? What's the question the disciples have? Who's the greatest? Who's the best? Right? Who's the top guy? Who is that? Right? And Christ is like, y'all need to be humble. Right? That's the person who's the greatest there. Turn over to Matthew 23. Matthew 23, verse 11 says, But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. All right? So what's the characteristic we're looking for there? Selfless. What else? Say it again. Not serving yourself, but other people, right? Okay, so what word is mentioned there? Being a servant, right? Because there is a difference between being selfless and then actually serving others, right? So we want to be a servant. We want a servant, somebody who's going to serve others, okay? Matthew, Mark, Luke 22. Luke chapter 22, verse 24 through 26. That's where we're going next. Luke chapter 22, verse 24 says, And there was also a strife among them, which of them should be accounted the greatest? And he said unto them, The kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and they that exercise authority upon them are called benefactors. But ye shall not be so. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief as he that doth serve. All right? So again, we have this question, this time in Luke, about who's the greatest? Who is the greatest? And what characteristics does Christ list as those who will be accounted the greatest versus the anti-characteristic? This is the part where y'all answer. What characteristic does Christ say we should have? What? Humility, right? There's humility again. What else? Again, being a servant, right? What else? Huh? Right? Servant. We got that. What else? What does that mean? So does that mean Clay should be he's the greatest, he's our leader now? What does a younger person have to do? Okay, so there's a submission to who? To who? Ultimately to God, right? So here's our obedient to God section there, right? And what else? What else does a younger person need to do? Okay, right? We have wise on there, right? Being wise. How does a younger person get wise? What does a younger person have to do to become wise? Okay? What does a younger person have to do? Observe, and when you ask a question, what do you need to do? Listen, right? Right? A younger person needs to listen, right? That's where that wisdom comes from. Even that's where the obedience comes from, right? Because that's how you follow the instructions. Go ahead. How?
Through their thoughts and through their actions.
What type of actions earn respect? Right? What type of action? Because there's two different types of actions, right? Because we have a bunch of our good leaders listed, but we also have people like Nebuchadnezzar who, where anything that went sideways on him, he goes off into a rage and, people are ended up in furnaces. So what type of actions earn respect? Peter?
I think it was Moses' father-in-law when he told him what to look for leaders, the men of truth.
Men of truth, right?
Somebody that's upright.
Right? That goes along with our righteousness, right? They want truth. Think about Solomon, right? The two harlots come to him, that's my baby. No, that's my baby. What does he do? What's he looking for? He's looking for the truth, right? What do we not want in Luke 22, 24 through 26? What are we not wanting? What's the anti-characteristic there? Right? The chief, right? The one who's seeking to be the greatest, right? The one that's pursuing greatness at all costs there. What else? There's an attitude of what in these verses then? It's mentioned. Starts with an L. Lordship, right? Okay, very good. Let's see, Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7. Let's get some Old Testament stuff. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7 says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. So what kind of characteristics are we looking for? Wisdom, right? A wise leader. Someone who is looking after wisdom. Think about Solomon's son, Rehoboam, right? Where the people come to him and say, look, man, your father made it hard on us. Give us a break and we'll serve you. And he goes to the old guys who were under Solomon, and they were like, look, just, take it easy on them and they'll follow you, and, you'll have your kingdom. And then there's the people he grew up with, the young men, and they're like, no, stick it to him, make it harder, right? And that's what he ends up going with. And everybody who reads that story goes, dude, you're an idiot, right? Darlene agrees. Very good. I like that. Did you? Awesome. Right? And it's like those little things in the heart of a leader determine the path of where that country then went. Peter.
James 3:1, my brother, be not many masters.
Right? Be not many
Certain
masters.
People that even if they're naturally gifted, we have to be careful as a church. We don't follow the ways of the world.
Right.
And somebody that's actually a born leader, as we call them, many times if they're in the Christian realm, God has to break them down to nothing before they're even usable.
Right.
And if you've been around church long, like you have, and for a while, you and I, we've seen people come in that you can just tell they want position.
Right. The ones that are seeking, right? Seeking to be taught versus those who are, where'd it go? Servant. Down there. He'll humble, and then our servant. Right there. Okay? Let's see, what else? Ecclesiastes 7, verse 9. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 9. We talked about this verse a couple weeks ago. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 9 says, be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Right? So if we had to look at leaders that were hasty to be angry, who's the one that pops in your head? Nebuchadnezzar, right? And how did his kingdom go? Versus who was a nice, humble leader? David, okay? Who was a nice, humble leader? Joshua, right? Very good. All right. Proverbs then, chapter 3. Proverbs chapter 3. Go back to Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 say, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Right? So we talked about being a servant ultimately to God, right? And being obedient to God and seeking God, actively seeking God and his wisdom, his direction, his guidance, right? And what do you want me as a leader to do? And then God will bless that. Okay? So there's just a few, right, that we discover that are in the Bible that are characteristics of a good leader, right? And so now as we look at Joshua, not Joshua, not even near Joshua, Joseph, Genesis chapter 39. As we look at Joseph, what do we see about Joseph? Genesis chapter 39, verse 1. And Joseph was brought down into Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hand of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And then if we look at Genesis 39, verse 22, this is after Potiphar. Verse 22 says, and the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever he did there, he was the doer of it. So what do we know about Joseph? What was Joseph's role both with Potiphar and in the prison? What was he? Huh? Yes, but what was he? What was his role? He was a servant. He was a steward, right? There you go. Servant, steward, right? He was the one. Technically he was in charge, but he wasn't in charge, right? He's the servant that was put over everything, and he's the one that gets blamed for everything when it goes wrong, right? But he was a servant. So are we looking in our leaders, right? We have servant up there. Do we need them to be slaves? That's what we're looking for. Was anybody no, I don't want to ask, actually. Are we looking for slaves to be our new leaders? No, that's not what's meant there, right? Sometimes in Joseph's case, that's what it was. But what did he learn through that? What did he learn through that? Humility, right? What else? What did he learn? Obedience, right? He had to learn obedience. He had to learn humility. All right, very good. Genesis 39, verse 9. This is Joseph speaking. He says, there is none greater in this house than I. Neither hath he, when he's talking about Potiphar, kept back anything from me but thee, talking about Potiphar's wife, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So is Joseph humble there? He says, there's nobody greater in this house than me. Is Joseph humble? Randy.
Making something of a stand, like integrity and all that. I think he made a stand and he got paid for it.
Right? He did take a stand and he did pay for it. Peter.
Honestly stating the facts.
Right? He's honestly stating the facts. How do you know that Joseph is actually humble here and not proud and not seeking lordship over the people? Clint.
I would think if he was being proud, he would have taken up Potiphar's wife's offer. Because he was thinking about himself.
Sure.
But he wasn't thinking about himself. He was remembering what his position underneath Potiphar.
Very good. Joseph is remembering his position under Potiphar, right? So he's saying, look, I know where I am in the house, but Potiphar is above me, and what can I not do? Right? Mess with his wife, why? Why? Because he doesn't want to sin against God. Right? So not only does he put know that Potiphar in that statement, know that Potiphar is above him, he also clearly states that, look, ultimately God is above that, and he's the one that says, I cannot do this. I cannot sin against my God. Right? Genesis 40, verse 8. Genesis chapter 40, verse 8. And they said unto him, we have dreamed a dream. And this is talking about the butler and the baker in the prison, right? And there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto him, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. Right? And if you jump down to chapter 41, verse 16, this is after Pharaoh's dream. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. So when the Pharaoh and when the butler and the baker have these dreams and they bring Joseph in before them to interpret the dreams, who is Joseph giving credit to? God. Who does he understand this ability comes from? God, right? So here we have a submission, right? He knows his place, but then ultimately, he's being obedient and righteous towards God. Let's see, what else? Genesis 41. Genesis 41, verses 32 through 34. Right? Genesis 41, verses 32 through 34. And for the dream that was doubled unto Pharaoh twice, it is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the fifth part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. Right, so this is after the dream. And what is Joseph telling Pharaoh? What? Right, choose out a guy, right, and do what? Prepare. How? What is he giving Pharaoh? Not just advice, but what else? He's giving him the plan. He's like, look, okay, this is what God is going to do. This is what you need to do. Okay? Who is Joseph at this point? He's a prisoner, right? And what is he doing? He's giving Pharaoh the plan from the dream that God gave Pharaoh, because God's going to do it, right? Is Joseph seeking glory here? No. What did he say? He said, choose out a man. He didn't say, choose me. He's like, look, I know what to do. That's not what he's doing there. He's saying, look, choose out a guy. This is what you need to do. I'll see you. I'll be back in prison if you need me, right? That's what's happening there. Okay? So he's not seeking his own greatness. He's seeking the benefit of others, though. Chuck. Right.
And if he was only taking care of Egypt, he would have had 1/7 each year.
Sure.
1/5. They had an abundance, and there were other people, including his family.
Yeah.
I mean, that came to them to buy and to.
Yeah, that whole region was coming to them for food because they were the only place.
God provided.
It says in there that Egypt was the only place around there that had food, right? And there, okay, so what does Philippians 2:3 tell us? Nobody knows. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem other better than themselves. What did Joseph do?
Esteemed others.
He did. He esteemed others, right? Not only Pharaoh, because Pharaoh's going to ultimately get the credit for it, right? But look, this is what you got to do to save everybody. And I'll be back in prison if you need me, right? That's what's going on there. Looking for others. Romans, as long as we're in the New Testament, Romans chapter 12, verse 19. Romans chapter 12, verse 19 says, Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. And you're like, wow, that's a weird verse for Joseph, right? But think about it. What is this verse telling us? That we're not supposed to avenge ourselves, right? We're not supposed to take vengeance on others for misdeeds they've done to us, right? How does that apply to Joseph? Randy?
Brothers.
His brothers, right? When they come and they visit, and even when they're talking to themselves, this mischief's come upon us because of what we did to Joseph, right? Or the butler that forgot him to 2 years, right? Who else? Potiphar's wife, right? Potiphar and his wife, they got to get food, right? So it doesn't matter the lies that are told against us, right? The imprisonment that came from that for Joseph, okay? It doesn't matter the incompetence of others, if you think of the butler who can't remember what just happened to him, right? Or the meanness and the hatred from the brothers. Whose place is it to take care of vengeance and retribution? Right? It's God's, right? And we see all of that in Joseph. Now, what if that was Nebuchadnezzar? Right? He goes scorched earth on the whole place and everything is just burnt, right? That's what's happening there. Luke chapter 12. Matthew, Mark, Luke. Luke chapter 12. Verses 29 through 31. Luke chapter 12, verses 29 through 21. Says, And seek not ye what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, neither be of doubtful mind. For all these things do the nations of the world seek after. And your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. All right, so we're seeking the kingdom of God and all these things that God knows that we need. We need food, we need clothing, we need a place to be, right? And God knows that we need these things. It says there, He knows that you need these things. How does that apply to Joseph? If we take a look at Genesis 41, we'll see how that applies to Joseph. Genesis 41, verses 40 through 45. What happens there? Genesis 41, 40 through 45. What happens there? You got to be louder than that, Tony.
Again, was given authority being second.
Okay, Joseph's given authority, right? What else? All his needs are provided for? Right? What needs did he have? He's now out of prison. He's second in command. What is he given? Huh? Authority? What else? Now, you can't eat leadership, right? But what's he given? Because of that authority, he gets what he needs. He gets the food, he gets the clothes. What else is he given? He's given a wife, right? So now his family, right? Which then leads into, and did we talk about it up here at all? Is faith up here? No, faith isn't up here. I don't see faith anyway. It's faith, right? How does Joseph exhibit faith? Randy? Huh? And everything he does, sure. What? How does Joseph exhibit faith? Right? He has 2 kids during the time of plenty. What happens after the time of plenty? Famine, right? So he knows 7 years of hardship, 7 years of famine are coming. And what does he have? He still has 2 kids. What is he trusting in? Is he trusting in his position as second in command in Egypt? He's trusting in God because that second in command position came as quickly as he can lose it. Right? Because he saw that from Pharaoh, baker, butler guy. They had a job one day and they're in prison the next day. And then one day they're out again and one other guy's dead. Right? So that can come as quickly as it came. Right? Those are the words. Right? But we see the faith that's in Joseph there. Let's see. What else do we see? What attributes of God do we see coming then from our leaders? What is desired, what characteristics are desired by our leaders? And then from the example we're given in Joseph, what attributes of God do we see? And how that all came to pass? Chuck. Okay. Right? Right? His love, his care, his provision. What else? Nobody else knows. Chuck took all the answers. So what? Selflessness? Selflessness, right? Sure. So we have selflessness. How do we see that? What did God do? God gave them the answer. Pull it towards Christ. We just did Resurrection Sunday. What did God give us? Right? Okay. What else? What other attributes of God do we see? Chuck. Sure. Don't question my spelling. Yeah. Right? I put that down as the sovereignty of God. Right? Who does he raise up? Who does he put down? Who does he give wealth? Who does he not give wealth? Right? Those things. Where does he put a famine? Where does he not? Right? Why did he pick Egypt to save the whole area of the world there? Say it again? Sure, his righteousness. You don't think he was judging other countries during that time? Okay. What else? Randy? Yeah. Goes along with his sovereignty there. What else? What about a word that starts with W? Wisdom. There you go, Tony. Right? Because not only does he say that there's going to be a famine, because God could just, okay, no crops grow for you. Sorry, you're done. And leave it at that. But what did he do? He gave the dream to Pharaoh. Pharaoh had to ask what the dream meant. Joseph had to interpret the dream. Where did that ability come from? Came from God, right? And then, no, that's not what my dream means. That can't be what that means. I mean, Pharaoh had to have the wisdom to go, you know what? That's right. We got to do something about that. That's going to be a problem, right? Okay, what else? What does that tell us about God that he even gave Pharaoh the dream in the first place? Starts with an M. Mercy. Right? Mercy. What about something that starts with a G? Grace, right? Because did God have to give them the dream? Did God have to tell anybody he was going to faminize the world? Because that's a good word. All my homeschool teachers in here cringe, right? Faminize, right? So there's the whole thing from our leaders, the good leaders that we talked about, the characters that we have, many of which are listed in the Bible that we covered in earlier in the class. We can see in Joseph's life, and now we can see why. Why was God with Joseph? Because he's doing what God told him to do, right? And with that, we have a video that we will watch, right? Special treat. Sure, go ahead. No, nothing like that. Whoops, don't run over that. No, there was nothing like in the realms of forgiveness there, but it was a way to provide for A, that area, and then B, used as the mechanism that he promised Abraham that his descendants were going to be in another country for a period of time and be servants to them, right? This is the mechanism to that, all right? So, with that, what I want to do is I want to show this video. It's about 7 minutes, so this will be the end of our class here. And there are physical evidences that prove that Joseph, the story that we're reading about of Joseph, is a real thing, right? It's not just a story we read in the Bible. It's actual events. And those types of things that are in the world, I like to point out so that you can trust the things that you're seeing and things that you're reading. There you go. So this will start off with a bit of Exodus stuff, but it's talking about Joseph in it, right? So go ahead, Robert, go ahead and hit that.
The following clip is from Patterns of Evidence, Exodus. For more information, go to patternsofevidence.com.
The Exodus was a story about the birth of a nation. It was time for Mahoney to go to Israel. This gave him the unique opportunity to meet with Israel's president, Shimon Peres, and hear his perspective about the character of Joseph and his rise from slavery to governing Pharaoh's court.
If you look at the way the story is written, God chose him for a mission.
I read somewhere that Tolstoy said that this is the greatest story ever published in human literature. The story of Joseph and his brother and his going to Egypt. Joseph was the first Jewish advisor on earth. And he advised the most powerful empire in the vicinity. He conquered the heart of everybody he saw, men and women.
With God's help, Joseph was able to save Egypt by warning of a coming calamity. 7 years of plenty would be followed by 7 years of terrible famine. Pharaoh is so impressed that he puts Joseph in charge of preparing for the famine and makes him second in command over the entire country.
He managed to achieve this by foretelling or explaining the dreams of Pharaoh about cattle coming out of the waters of the Nile. As first of all 7 fat cows, and then 7 lean cows come out and devour the fat cows. It's an extraordinary story, but the clue here is that these cows are coming out of the Nile. It's the Nile itself which is the cause of both the plenty and the famine.
If David's interpretation is right, then the regulation of the Nile may have been key in planning for the coming famine.
There's a canal or waterway that connects the Nile to the Fayum Basin. This is a large lake area, which has the name Bahr Yosef, which means the waterway of Joseph. And this goes back thousands of years as far as we can tell.
Why do you think that canal has that name?
Because I think he made it. I think it was under his instructions as Vizier of Egypt that canal was cut. And it was cut to divert half the water from the Nile into the Fayum Basin. You then get back to the situation where the water levels are just right for growing crops.
Can you see it today?
It's still in use today.
And the construction of this water diversion system is dated to the same period as the early settlement at Avaris.
Joseph gathers up all the grain during the 7 years of plenty in Egypt. He gathered as much as the sand of the sea. And then the famine comes to the entire region. And only Egypt has bread. So everyone comes to Joseph for what they need for survival. When their money runs out, they sold their animals. When that ran out, they sold their land, and eventually they sold themselves. So Pharaoh, by the end of the 7 years, owns everything in Egypt.
Mahoney wanted to know if there ever was a time in this era when a dramatic shift of wealth and power occurred between the people of Egypt and the Pharaoh. He went to Pennsylvania to see an archaeologist who spent many years studying the Exodus and the conquest. His name is Dr. Bryant Wood.
When we look at Egyptian history, we find something very significant happen at this exact time. Egypt was divided up into areas called nomes, kind of like districts all over the country. And the leaders of these nomes had tremendous wealth and tremendous power. We get to a point in Egyptian history when suddenly that all changes and all the wealth is concentrated with the Pharaoh. What on earth happened here? If you read the Egyptian history books, there is no explanation for it. They don't know what happened, how it happened. I mean, this was a tremendous social, economic change.
Well, what do you think happened?
Well, we have the answer in the Bible, and it's Joseph's famine policy, and he brings the wealth into Pharaoh, and it fits exactly with Egyptian history.
David believes these events occurred during the reigns of 2 important Middle Kingdom pharaohs.
This key time is during the co-regency between Senusret III and his son Amenemhat III. I believe this is the time of the famine, and that Amenemhat was Joseph's pharaoh. Amenemhat is depicted with worry lines. His ears are turned out so that he can listen to the concerns of the people. He's not depicted in the usual bland way that you see in all the other statues of past and future pharaohs. And I think this is an indication that in his time, Egypt was experiencing serious problems. And guess what? He builds his pyramid right next to Bahr Yosef, the waterway of Joseph.
The amount of archaeological evidence matching the first step of arrival in the biblical sequence seemed overwhelming to Mahoney. The Syrian-styled house that appeared in the Delta along with a palace fit for royalty, whose occupant was a high Semitic official from the Canaan area who wore a multi-colored coat. The waterway of Joseph, contemporary with the rise of Avaris. The end of influence and wealth for the regional governors as the power of Pharaoh reached new heights. Yet these events converged at a time when the statues of the pharaohs were depicted in a unique, careworn way, the telltale signs of a kingdom in distress.
Well, why is it that we've never heard of these finds?
Because in the scheme that's used by scholars to date all these events, they're way too early. They're much too early to be Israelites. I'm basically saying, well, why not call a spade a spade?
At the pyramid tomb of Avaris, excavations revealed one other important piece of evidence.
The crucial clue for me, which says to me that this man with the multicolored coat is Joseph, is found in the story of Exodus. When Joseph is on his deathbed, he tells his brethren that when they leave, they must take his body with them to the promised land. What matches the story even more incredibly is that pyramid tomb was empty when the archaeologists found it. There was nothing in it at all apart from a few fragments of this smashed statue. There were no bones, there were no mummy beads, no coffin wood, nothing. It was cleaned out.
So it was a grave robber?
Not a grave robber. What grave robber is going to take the bones? Bones are intrinsically of no value whatsoever.
Okay.
Nobody takes the bones. Only people who are treating the body with reverence take the bones. The body was taken out, and all the grave goods were taken out. I think this is the tomb of Joseph, the pyramid tomb of Joseph, honored by Pharaoh with a colossal statue, that when Moses decided to take the people out of Egypt, he made sure he fulfilled that promise of Joseph to take the body out of the tomb and take it to Shechem and bury him in the promised land.
This location, photographed in the 1800s, is where many believe Joseph's bones were finally laid to rest in the ancient town of Shechem in Canaan. The city is known today as Nablus on the West Bank, where this tomb has been at the center of much political and religious tension.
The Exodus is surrounded by controversy on many levels. Even David Rohl suggesting specific evidence of Joseph and the early Israelites' arrival in Egypt is archaeologically controversial because he looks earlier in time than what is conventionally accepted.
Archaeological evidence that they are finding that proves what happened in the story of Joseph. The canal that was created by Joseph is still there and is still being used to regulate the Nile River and to grow crops efficiently, right? So there's a lot of different things and evidences that are there that prove the Bible correct. So I just want to point that out and encourage, strengthen your faith in God's Word. And with that, we'll have to conclude our epic adventure through God's Word today.